on this edition of the Self-Publishing Show.
And he just said, take a look around. You know, we're spending $150 million on this movie, and this is all because of an idea that came out of your head. And James, that was amazing.
Publishing is changing. No more gatekeepers, no more barriers, no one standing between you and your readers. Do you want to make a living from your writing? Join indie bestseller Mark Dawson and first-time author James Blatch as they shine a light on the secrets of self-publishing success. This is the Self-Publishing Show. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
Hello and welcome to the Self-Publishing Show with me, James Blatch.
And me, Mark Dawson.
It's a Hollywood special today, Mark. It's an interview you haven't heard yet, but I recorded with Eric MiKrantz a few weeks ago. And just a sneak preview of this interview. It's an exciting interview. But, you know, you talk to authors all the time, and you are one who have a book that's being optioned, that's being talked about in development. But you can talk to authors who had that start 25 years ago and have still not seen something being filmed. And I know you're very sanguine about this. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Here's a man for whom it has happened. I mean, it wasn't, of course, it's never straightforward. I think it took years. It didn't look like it was going to happen and then started to look like something. Anyway, the point is that a few months ago, he flew to Britain, visited the set and was introduced to Mark Wahlberg and Toby Jones and Sophie Cookson and the director of a $140 million shoot, which was his book. And the producer put his arm around him as he walked him away and said, look, at everything here is because of the idea you came up with in your book. So he's the man, he is an author who's had that moment that perhaps as authors we all dream about potentially happening. And he talks very openly about the process. He had a brilliant way of getting the deal in the first place, a very innovative deal, a very innovative idea, very interesting. But he talks also about the process and how much you make at each stage of things going from option to all the way through to principal photography and then distribution and release and so on. But really nice guy, very energetic in his marketing and very innovative. So Eric, coming up in just a few minutes. Right, before then, Patreon welcomes is now your department.
Oh dear. Okay, well, yes, we've got one this week. So it's Jason Caldwell. Hasn't told us where he lives, but thank you to Jason for signing up and getting bits and bobs and some goodies that we send out to all of our Patreon subscribers. So we're very grateful for anyone who supports us, and it can be a fairly low amount, weekly amount, but it is really gratefully received, and it enables us to make sure that the podcast keeps coming out at the same every week. We haven't missed a week yet, have we? We
haven't. It's come close. I mean, we're recording
5 years.
We're recording this pretty close to the deadline. There's a team of people
a little bit
slightly upset behind us who have to do all the work in double quick time now.
Yeah. We're one of those things. We're a bit busy this week. We're very grateful for everyone who's supporting, and the several hundred who've been with us for ages. So you guys are great. So thank you very much. If you want to sign up, it is James, the URL.
It is patreon.com/self-publishing show.
There we go. Very professional.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you very much. And yes, lots of goodies available to you as a Patreon supporter of the show. We've got Eric coming up. I was just going to mention, what was I going to mention? Yes, my ongoing quest to market one book, which is seemingly quite difficult to make a profit on. So I scaled up my ads. I think I may have told you I was spending maybe 13 or 14 pounds a day, and on average making a small profit, £2 to £3 a day. So I can't remember, it's about 70, 80 quid a month, something like that. I did scale them up to about £20 a day and have fallen into loss, which is quite interesting. I haven't looked carefully at the figures and optimized whether there's a way of sustaining that slightly scaled up and still making money. Although I did sell 10 books yesterday. So that it's always slightly annoying with KDP, isn't it? You see a spike on your charts, and then you look at the money. It takes a couple of days because they are orders, I think, rather than sales at that stage, but I'll see that money in a couple of days show up. But interesting. I don't, it's unless you have a kind of Da Vinci Code moment, or you get picked for the Richard and Judy book club or something, which is a famous book club in the UK. I guess it's the Oprah book club in America, isn't it? Would be the equivalent. I think one book, we have always said is your loss leader, most likely, and that is probably how it's going to be for me. If I can make a small profit, I'll be thrilled about that. I think the environment generally, looking at Fuse books, I've been doing just done the month end, or in the middle of actually the month end for our two existing authors, Robert Story and Kerry J. Donovan. Last 10 days picked up actually quite a bit for both authors from the first part of the month. And I sort of feel that it's picked up a little bit recently. I think it's been a bit tougher this year than it was last year, personally, looking at the Fuse figures. I don't know how you felt about that, Mark.
I spent actually quite a lot of time over the weekend. I mean, I'm spending probably $300 to $350 a day at the moment on ads at the moment on to the first Milton book, the first Atticus book, and the first Milton box set across US, UK, Germany, Australia, and Canada. And I've got about 6 weeks worth of data at that kind of spend, and I just wanted to analyze it and see if I could see. Well, basically make sure that it was positive. And if that's off air, I might send you a very detailed spreadsheet that I put together. But it actually looks, I've kind of done it in two ways. I've looked at benchmarking and affiliate tracking. I'm using both, but benchmarking, I've kind of looked at, I think, about 45 days prior to the ads running, and then about 45 days post the ads running. And the only thing that changed on that 45th day was the ads switching on. Nothing else changed. I had a book release, but I kind of take that out and flatten those numbers down because those can't be attributed to the campaign because those are going to the first in the series. So any sales of the 19th book are very unlikely to be from an ads campaign. And the kind of the bottom line is, in the US, on all books, the average daily revenue before ads and after ads is about $200 difference. So it looks like that is, on an average daily spend in the US of about $80, it looks like those ads are bringing in about $50, $60, $70, something like that in terms of profit. That's what it looks like. And then I also just double checking and look at the first 11 books. So, not the full 19 books, or not the full catalog, which is nearer 40 books now, and kind of seeing the same kind of numbers, a little bit of variation, but the same kind of numbers. So I think that they're profitable. So, but not in all markets. So, I mean, Germany, weirdly, Germany's been an absolute powerhouse for me this year. The ads there, I think, are making about €50 a day loss. So I need to think carefully about that. Australia and Canada are kind of just about break even, I think. UK and US doing quite well. And the only thing I'd say on that, even those ones that are making a loss or just breaking even, is these are all new readers who probably haven't read any of my books before. So it's not just that first sale or even the first few sales. Some of those readers will now be with me for the long haul. But it's interesting. I love spreadsheets, as do you. So it's quite good to kind of break that down, and but it would be quite nice to have a chat off air with you just for a second opinion, because otherwise it's just me and quite a lot of money going out. So
yes, more than we spend on Fuse, I think, actually, say over 3 authors or 2 authors. Although one of them is interestingly is at 32%, second month in a row, 32% of ad spend to revenue, which I think is good, and I will continue to scale him up at that point. The other author is slightly higher, knocking on 40%, which is too high, but I'll scale up and see if we can maintain that. And even if it goes to 35%, it makes more profit. That's good. It's funny, isn't it? Because the disconnect between where you spend your money on advertising and where different companies, different organizations where you see revenue. But there is a bottom line here, which is over a longer period of time, you can look at how much your revenue is and how much you're spending on ads. Now that will tell you in black and white whether you're making money or not. All the detail to make changes is below that. And that is where the reason you're hesitant about this, and people might think, well, why doesn't he know that this is profitable or not, is because there is unfortunately some guesswork involved. Imagine you owned a shop on a high street and you had a billboard campaign and a television campaign. You don't really know for certain whether the billboard's bringing in the money, whether the television's bringing in the money. You can do surveys. You can stop one of them. There's ways of doing it. You stop one of them for 6 months and then you invest in another and so on. That's the sort of thing that we end up doing. And it's all in our control. Probably easier today than it ever has been to turn things on and off and check those figures. But it does require it does require a bit of spreadsheet love at some point, doesn't it?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, and the only thing I don't have any, I know that nothing else changed. So if I'm doing a A/B test, you only test one variant at once. If you have otherwise, you can't tell which has had the effect. So that's why I took the launch out. I had a BookBub. I had a couple of BookBubs in this period, and I've flattened those out. So take them out, take the average, and replace the several thousand downloads with the average of what was happening before that. Because there's no point. So then the thing you can't take out of that is BookBubs typically have tails.
Yeah. So
you might on day one have 1,000 downloads, but then there will be sales into the rest of the catalog that have been generated by that ad, and you can't say. It's not possible. So you're never going to be exact, which is a bit irritating. Because I like to be precise, but you just have to kind of just do your best to identify the trend and then attribute the trend to the only thing that you think has changed in that period. So if revenue's gone up by 100% over a period, and the only thing I've done is start spending more aggressively on ads, then it's reasonable to assume that that's caused the rise. But interesting.
Yeah, you do have to keep on top of the figures, and actually it is a bit overwhelming. Probably if you're new to this and listening to this conversation, you'll be thinking, I could never do that. But actually you can. I think most people, it's well within the grasp of most people. You compartmentalize it, you start small, you know that bit thoroughly because it's quite simple, and then you just build on that. And so although it looks more complex, it's the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, and I've said loads of times, well, I'm not... I did all right at school, but maths was not my strongest subject. I actually got a B for maths, so I'm not a mathematician. I'm not great at Excel. I'm good enough to make it do what I need it to do. But when you start talking about pivot tables and stuff like that, my eyes close.
I love a pivot table.
Yeah, I can't do that. So I'm not that way inclined. So you don't need kind of a degree in statistical analysis to work this stuff out. It is within the grasp, I think, of most people.
Yeah.
A lot of it's common sense.
Yes, it is. And then beyond that, there's some artistry as well, particularly when it comes to targeting your books. I've been thinking this week about looking at my own book, which I've marketed exclusively as a thriller, a military aviation Cold War thriller. But actually, I've noticed on quite a few of the reviews, the one-star review I got, the negative one, said something quite interesting. Oh, no, was it the one-star? I can't remember. No, it wasn't. I think I just said most boring book ever or something. But somebody...
Yeah, I read that.
Yeah, thanks. Somebody with a lower star review said, thought this was going to be a thriller, just turned out to be a mystery. And the way my book works, it is kind of a mystery. It is almost procedural. This guy's trying to work things out. And I'm just wondering, that might actually be an audience who would enjoy the book, and it might be worth me experimenting with a more mystery-based set of targeting, see how that goes. So, yeah, there's a bit of guesswork and artistry in that that's not so black and white, can't really be done on a spreadsheet until afterwards when you've experimented a bit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't think you're going to be... Agatha Christie's not going to work for you, but there might be some kind of mystery... based interest that might be worth a look.
Yeah, historical sort of procedurals, historical 60s based murders type. I haven't started the research yet, but I need to try and find some authors.
I think it'll be difficult because your cover looks very much like a military thriller. That's the issue you might have.
So I could do a new cover just for the mystery people.
I wouldn't do that.
Spyglass and a little aeroplane in it.
Yeah.
Okay, right. I've teased our interviewee, so let us move on to him. His name is Eric MiKrantz. You are going to love the way that he got his film deal, and you're going to remember the story and tell it to people. Here's Eric.
This is the Self-Publishing Show. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
Hello. When I look at your name, Eric, it looks like Dr. Eric MiKrantz, but it's D. Eric MiKrantz, isn't it? You're not a doctor.
I'm not a doctor. No, it's just D. It's just David.
I mean, I'm feeling fine. I was just wondering what that D stood for.
Yeah, you can't be too careful these days.
No, an online consultation. Well, Eric, look, welcome very much, very, very welcome to the podcast. I'm actually very excited about hearing this story because it sounds like part fairy tale, but part your own imagination and inventiveness in the way that you've marketed your book has led you to where you are today, which is in a very exciting position. And I've done my research as well. And this story, which is quite incredible, I can tell the listeners already, checks out. Story checks out. So it's really happening. So why don't you start by telling us a little bit about you and your background and your writing, and then we'll move on to specifically how you marketed this book.
Sure, absolutely. The first thing that I want to do is I want to say right at the top, this is not a paid endorsement, that I'm actually a student of the self-publishing formula. And I have been for about a year and a half now. And I've completed almost all of the course. I've gotten tremendous value out of it. And I continually go back to it. In fact, I was just, even this morning, comparing the Beyonce, the Bella, and the Dawson variants of book launches.
Oh, yes.
Because my book comes out in 15 days in the US. So I'm huge fans of you guys.
Right.
And by the way, congratulations on Final Flight. I saw that that just went up. I've sort of been following that in the different podcast episodes and your progression there. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. And just as a little, they call it foreshadowing, I'm thinking about leaving a copy just lying around in a hostel in Kathmandu, just to see what happens. Nobody will know what that reference is, but they will know by the end of this interview. Okay, anyway, let us carry on. That's very kind of you, Eric. Thank you very much. And it's a delight to have you on the show. So you as a writer, where did that start?
So this started, my first real writing started back in the 1990s when I got it was sort of a weird thing where I got a job as a radio talk show host. I sort of joined this with my good friend, my college buddy, Dan Salas. He'd always wanted to be in radio and brought me on as his sidekick. And then after that, got my own show. And part of what I did on the show was to interview authors for their books and do book reviews. And then I would write book reviews for my local newspaper, which I live in Denver, Colorado, and that's the Denver Post.
Okay.
So then I wrote for the Denver Post for a couple of years. I'd actually studied literature at university and had a lot of experience writing there. But that was my first paid writing gig, was as a contributor to a newspaper. And then I moved to Europe. I moved to Rome in 1999. It was kind of a funny series of events. The radio station sold and changed to Spanish language format. And so they're like, okay,
right,
Mr. Maikranz, have fun. And so then the Denver Post said, well, if you're not interviewing authors, right, we really can't use you for your articles. So I got a job with UPI as a correspondent in Rome. And I submitted a few stories there. It was actually very difficult to do that. But I got a job as a tour guide as well. And when I got the job as a tour guide in Rome, I met a gentleman who had written tour guide books for a publisher in Asia called Marshall Cavendish. And he introduced me to his publisher, and that introduction eventually led to me writing a tour guide book on Rome and one on Venice.
Wow.
So I've actually written 2 nonfiction tour guide books. That was in early to mid 2000s.
Okay.
And then that was around the same time that I was putting some finishing touches on my debut novel called The Reincarnationist Papers, which is available in the UK on Amazon and will be launched probably using the Dawson launch, not the Beyonce launch, in 15 days.
Okay. Well, good luck with that. That's excellent. And Marshall Cavendish, they're a big publisher, big name in travel books in particular, I think, aren't they? They
are, yeah. And they were a lot of fun to work with, and it was a really amazing experience. It didn't pay that well. It's going to be no surprise that traditional publishing doesn't pay that well to a lot of listeners of this podcast. But it taught me a lot. It taught me a lot, right? And it taught me a lot about the production of a book. And even though it was nonfiction, it taught me a lot about editing. Some of what I learned about editing, I learned a lot more with this publisher that I have now. But yeah, I'm sorry, James, you were going to...
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, it brings you to the position where with your debut novel, you thought a little bit outside of the traditional methods.
Yeah, I did. And part of that is my day job, my IT background. So, you know, for a while now, and this has actually only changed as of Thursday, for a while now, like Mark, right? When Mark worked in the legal industry and the film industry and wrote all of his books, right? I've been writing early in the morning and working a day job as an executive at a Silicon Valley software firm called Oracle Corporation.
Mm-hmm.
Larry Ellison, you might have heard of him. And one of the things that I learned at Oracle is something that we like to call crowdsourcing. And that's where we engage with our end users of software. It could actually be corporate customers or actually physical human beings, end users that are using something to like on a screen or on a keyboard, to actually get their feedback and get their buy-in on something that we want to do and make an investment going forward. And it was actually it was partly that sort of catalyzed me to think outside the box toward trying some innovative marketing ideas to get my book to a wider audience.
And how do you start when crowdsourcing does require some sort of crowd to start off with? I mean, how did you go about that with a book without at that stage without a fiction list?
Yeah. Well, I assumed that if I put it on for sale out on Amazon, that some people would buy it and that there would be some copies that went out into the world. And I was right. It worked. I tried to write a good book. I tried to, I gave books away. I printed copies. I asked people to give it to their friends. I would volunteer to do readings at libraries and book clubs and anything to kind of get the word out early on. Because you ask an excellent point, because I did not land in this with an email list, with a reader list, with what we would call in the software industry an installed base of users, right? I started with zero.
But your innovation, I think, was the almost like affiliate marketing in the way that you incentivize people to recommend the book. Is that right?
Yeah, in a way. The way that I look at it is that I use this technique of crowdsourcing to empower individual readers to become agents for me, and agents plural, in that there could be a multitude of them, and there were. And, we should probably go back and revisit the crowdsourcing for a second, because people might think that that's sort of, Silicon Valley IT speak. We have a couple of examples of crowdsourcing today that we use almost every day. In IT, there's a big one called Linux operating system. And that's where, Linus Torvald and a bunch of other computer programmer geek types like me go and they take a part of the software that they want to write and they write it and it goes through peer review. But there's another one that we use every day, and that's Wikipedia. Wikipedia is really a crowdsourced initiative. I can submit an article, it gets peer reviewed by others, and then we're all, experiencing and enjoying and contributing to this large thing that we're all sharing, and, with a specific set of goals that have been set out at the very beginning. And so that's what I did with my first novel. So what I decided to do, there's a bit of a backstory here. I had done the traditional thing that most authors do, which is to pitch agents and see if you can get an agent to pick you up and try to, pitch you to publishers. And I pitched agents in sort of the 2008, 2009 timeframe. And surprise, surprise, it was a difficult experience with a lot of rejection, a lot of polite people. But, and a lot of people that actually loved the book, but they just couldn't quite figure out how to sell it. And at that same time, I started, giving away copies and handing copies to people that are, friends and family and others, and asking them to give it to people and sort of doing some organic marketing there. And I kept hearing back, James, that everybody loved the book, that they loved it. They wanted to read more. They wanted to see more in a series. And so I had this feeling that the quality was there. And if the quality was there and the demand was there, then all I had to do was figure out a way to get it to a wider audience, figure out a way to break through those gatekeepers, right? As you guys say, as I think it's one of your mottos, right, is there's no one standing between you and your readers now. And I really embraced that. And so what I did is on the front page of my book, this is the book, by the way, we should probably talk about it. It's The Reincarnationist Papers, soon to be the Paramount movie Infinite, starring Mark Wahlberg. On the first page of this, in 2009, I self-published it, and this was before Amazon KDP. I think CreateSpace might have been around, but I did it on Lightning Source and then sourced it through Ingram Spark to Amazon. I put on the first page, James, I put a reward to my readers. And that reward was to offer them an agent's commission if they read the book, loved the book, and would introduce the book to a New York publisher, a Hollywood producer who would take the book to a wider audience with a publishing contract or with a movie deal. And then I spelled out the terms. It was 10% of any cash advance that I received from a publishing deal or from a movie deal, but payable only when either the advance went through or when the movie started shooting. And then I priced it on Amazon as low as it would go, which back then was 0 cents for a while. And then they forced me to go up to 99 cents for the Kindle version. And then for the print version, I printed them for as cheaply as I could on Lightning Source. And in the first book, it's the type is very small. The margins are very narrow at the edge so that I could get it done for as little print cost as possible. And then I priced them for like $5 each on for paperback copies. And then I sent them out into the world. And I just hoped, I had no idea if this would work. This sounded like the zaniest idea in the world, to offer a reward, offer the agent's commission to readers. And my wife thought that it was an interesting idea, but was probably deranged.
Interesting, but eccentric, I can imagine.
Eccentric, right?
Let me just
unorthodox.
Let me just before we get to the point where somebody may or may not have won that commission. Let me just ask you what your sort of aim was at that point. You priced it. You're basically giving the book away almost at cost. So your aim here was visibility, a film deal or something along those lines, or simply getting the book in people's hands. And presumably you're thinking about monetary rewards coming later down the line, maybe with books 2, 3, or 4. Is that the kind of plan in your mind?
Precisely, James. Okay. Precisely. One of the things that is very common in Silicon Valley, if you think about companies like Uber or Lyft or Facebook, is they think about getting market share first, and then they think about monetizing, right? Yeah. So for me, what I wanted to do is I wanted to get it into as many people's hands as possible. And so I just, decided to forego any margin, any profit, anything like that. I didn't want to lose money. I didn't want it to be a loss leader. And then I just hoped, and I use a lot of self-affirmation and visualization techniques, and I prayed a lot that people would find it and like it, and they did. And there were some amazing things that happened.
That is really interesting, and I think it's something we should think about, that market share as vaguely the right, it's a concept of what you should be doing with book one. It's what I'm doing with The Final Flight. I could easily price The Final Flight at $5 or $6 now, because I know I've got some friendly supporters who are all going to buy it. But the point of this book is visibility, the same as you're doing. And I think we should be thinking about that with book one. However much we've slaved over it, and goodness knows, I'm sure both of us have put some hours into it. It is about you establishing yourself, getting that market share. I mean, I use Strava to run on. It's a classic example of a Silicon Valley app that was in everybody's hands, in everybody's pockets, gazillions of people around the world, and all it was doing was burning through its investors' money. It never turned a cent, never made a penny, until about 2 years ago when they created a premium version, which you didn't have to have. You got a lot of features with the basic. That was the first step. Then they had a big think, shall we advertise it, or shall we just make move some of those free features into premium? And now, because we're all using it, we all talk to each other on it. It's the app we all share. We're locked into it. And most of us, I would say probably half my friends, pay the premium. So that's
right.
That's the sort of thing Silicon Valley does every day now. They invented that effectively. I don't think it happened years ago. That's what we should be thinking about with book one, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Mark has a great example. I mean, one of the, I found Mark by accident, by basically reading about self-publishing success, because this is before I had a traditional publishing deal in the US. And then, I saw his picture and I read his story, and then I went to his website, and then I realized, oh my gosh, this guy's going to give me 3 books for free if I sign up. I mean, that's really, that's been, in my, at least from my vantage point, a key to his success.
Yeah. So now, your book with your incentive in the front cover is sitting around in various places on the planet.
Well, I had no idea where it went because, who'd bought it. I had no idea. It was in the low thousands of copies. It wasn't a lot of copies. And for, this was in 2009, I self-published this, and I would get about 1 or 2 emails every 90 days, James, saying, oh, I read your book. I really loved it. I'm interested in this reward offer. My brother's friend's wife, babysits for somebody at HarperCollins, or, my wife's brother's uncle, works on the set at Paramount Pictures or whatever, right? And so a few little stops and starts for reward, people chasing the reward. But the breakthrough happened on Thanksgiving Day, which is a holiday here in the US, on 2010, which is about a year and a half later after I'd done this. A gentleman by the name of Rafi Krohn, who at that time was an assistant to a big Hollywood director, actually was traveling between projects. And he was in Kathmandu, Nepal, and found a copy of my book. He found the original version, which is this version of the Reincarnationist Papers. This is actually the Lightning source printed one with the reward in the front. And so he found it and read it and loved it. So everything's going according to plan, right, for my reward. And he says, hey, I work in Hollywood and I can totally see this book as a movie. Has anyone claimed the reward yet? And I said, no. He said, Eric, I'm going to get this made into a movie. And I thought, oh my God, this zany, unorthodox, outlandish idea has worked. And so he said, when I get back to the US, right, we're going to, we'll talk again. And then it was about 24 to 48 hours later, James, I sort of came back down to earth, and I thought, well, maybe somebody's playing a prank on me. Who knows? Maybe he's going to follow through. Maybe he's not. But he did. When he came back from Asia, he sent me a legal agreement that was a finder's agreement like that they use in Hollywood. But it was exactly to the terms that I'd specified in the reward on the first page of the book. And I signed the agreement. We started working together. We wrote a treatment together. We created something called a beat sheet, which is sort of like a movie outline. And Rafi went out and started pitching this to different people in Hollywood. And it took him, he stopped at several studios, and it took him several years, but he eventually got it sold to a production company called Bellevue Productions. It's run by my friend John Zalzerny. And he's the first one in Hollywood that gave me money on an option for my book. And I was over the moon. I couldn't believe that this had happened. But then Rafi told me, it's like, listen, be very careful. These is still a long shot. It's still like less than 1% of these that ever make it. And then, Rafi went from finding the book. He actually found it in a hostel in Nepal. It went from there to Bellevue Productions, and then Bellevue hired a screenwriter named Ian Shore. And Ian Shore and I have subsequently become friends. And Ian wrote a great adapted screenplay called Infinite. And Bellevue Productions took the screenplay Infinite out to Paramount, or actually took it out to 5 different studios: Paramount, Sony, Warner Brothers, Universal, all of those big studios. And Paramount came back the same day and bought it and didn't want anybody else to be able to bid on it.
Wow.
And so, the old axiom, James, when they say you just need one champion, right?
Yes.
You can take a lot of no's. You can take hundreds and hundreds of no's, but you just need one yes.
One backer.
Man,
yeah.
I got that one yes from Rafi, who read the book, read the reward, loved the book, decided to champion it. And it took him a long time. It took him 7 years from when he read the book to when the deal was done in 2017 with Paramount. But the guy was just tireless, and he's been my champion. He's been my friend. He's been my hero throughout the whole time.
Wow.
And Paramount started shooting the film in 2019, and they shot it in England, by the way.
Oh, okay.
They shot it in Gillette Studios in the west suburbs of London. And then when I went there, I actually went on set in a village, it's about 60, 70 kilometers northwest of London, called Tring.
Tring. I know Tring. I was born near Tring.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
So on...
I don't know it very well. I was very young at the time I was born, so...
Oh, all right, because just north of Tring, there's an old Rothschild family mansion on a big estate there, and they filmed it there. They filmed part of the movie there.
It's not at Holton, right? R.A.F. Holton's, that's the Rothschild place. But anyway, that's nearby.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it's that.
And so right after they started shooting, I paid Rafi the reward, and the reward, I had a maximum on the reward of $10,000, 10% of any advance, and the Paramount deal capped out over that. So I paid Rafi the reward in December of 2019.
Wow. So
it took nine years, but it worked.
But I'm interested that's a fantastic story, and well done you. And the main thing is you've written a brilliant book that obviously Rafi couldn't put down when he first picked it up. And I do wonder how many projects somebody like him has on the go at any one time, because obviously you can't earn money off one project that takes 7 years to come to fruition. Is he bidding around with like 12, 20 other ideas at any one time?
So Rafi's not an agent. Rafi is he's an executive producer.
Okay, so he's working on movies anyway.
An assistant director at a production company. So and he's got a job, but he does have a few passion projects. He had another one that was sort of a prequel to the Frankenstein story. Not that Mary Shelley is going to, come back and write a prequel, but it's sort of, chronologically, it would be something that happened earlier in his life before he does the experiments with the monster. And that's been a passion project of his for a long time. The Reincarnationist Papers has been a passion project of his for a long time. And he's actually an executive producer on the movie Infinite. So I haven't talked to him about any of his other projects that he's passionate about, but he does. He's got a great artistic vision, and he just latches onto an idea, and there's just no quit in the guy, right? He just keeps going and going and going until he hits a yes.
I guess that's what it needs.
It's exactly what every author needs.
Yeah.
They need a real champion out there. They need their own Rafi Crone.
So let me ask you about the deal from an author point of view, because I think this is in a lot of authors' minds is what do I say when they come to me, and what should I expect, and what sort of contracts should I come out with, what fee should I ask for, or will I be offered? Can you give us some flesh on those bones so we understand the process?
Yeah, I can. So at first, they'll probably come to you with an option contract. And an option contract is just that. It's an option, and it's going to be time bound, usually 18 to 36 months, where they will pay you a fee. And don't expect to be able to go island shopping with the money that you're going to get from the option, right? Because this is all very speculative at this point. But they'll pay you a reasonable fee. Again, not earth shattering, but then what that'll do is they'll say, James, you cannot take Final Flight to anybody else to have them make an adaptation, a film or television adaptation of this, until we've had 18 to 36 months to create our own and pitch it to the industry. And so during that window of time, you should expect them, they'll give you a check, and then they might collaborate with you. They might not. They collaborated with me a little bit as far as, hey, where's the franchise going? Because they wanted to put in some extra things into the movie that were not in the first book, but are in the second book in the series. And the screenwriter actually got distracted with another project at first, but then came back to it on the second half of the option, the second 18 months, and created just a blockbuster knockout script that just wowed Paramount. Wow. And so when that happens, there's in the option contract, there'll be, okay, you're going to get X number of dollars for 18 to 36 months of us having intellectual control over an adaptation of this. If the adaptation sells, then you get paid another amount of money, which is a bigger amount of money. Think car shopping, right? And then when that's like when the option gets sold to a studio, and then when the studio has it, they'll develop their own script, or they'll make changes to the script that they bought. They'll start attaching a director, lead actor, lead female actor, supporting actors, and they'll start putting the team together to make the movie. You don't really get paid the full price of what they detailed you would get paid in the option if the movie gets made until the first day when the production company starts putting actors on film, or the digital equivalent today.
So like the first sort of day of shooting, you mean?
First principal day of shooting. I think that's actually the contractual term in the contract.
I guess not. I guess if they've turned up on the first day of principal photography, it's going to happen. But before that point, it could not.
And the thing is, this is what John Zelzierny kept telling me. They said, Eric, please temper your expectations because it's still only 1% of them from this point actually make it. Once we sold to Paramount, they said, hey, it's good to be excited. Let's open a bottle of champagne, but it's still only about 5% of these that get sold actually get to principal shooting. And Rafi was actually working on another project that had gone all the way there. And then like a week before they were going to shoot it, they just shut it all down.
Wow.
And oh my God, I never want to be that author, right, who's attached to that and then has that happen. And this project, James, went through a lot of tumult along the way.
Right.
In 2017, when Paramount bought it, it was like a couple of months later that they had a change in CEO at Paramount, and the new CEO came in and said, "Oh, okay, I'm bringing in a whole new crew. We want brand new, fresh ideas for everything." And an Infinite movie went straight up on the shelf. And the way that it came off the shelf was, again, another sort of 1,000,000 to 1 chance, like the Nepal story was with Rafi, is that Paramount and one of their primary producers, Lorenzo de Bonaventura, at least this is the way the story has been conveyed to me, invited Antoine Fuqua, the director. He directed Training Day, the Equalizer movies.
Training Day is superb.
Training Day is superb. I think the Equalizer movies are really good as well. Just good action, but not just action for action's sake. Action that's character driven with narrative and feeling. Tense, and but he's got that tension. He's a great artist and a really cool guy. That they brought him in to pitch him on doing a different movie that he was sort of lukewarm about. But then he said, hey, but there's this script that you bought a year and a half ago called Infinite about people who remember their past lives that I'm really interested in. And then, boom, he just brought it off the shelf, started putting actors around it. It was going to be Captain America, Chris Evans at first, and he was going to play my lead character. And then he had to drop out, and the project looked like it was going to die. And then this is when the John Zalziernis and the Rafi Krones called me and said, well, you know, I had a good run at it, but we didn't quite make it. It ends up being in the you know, not in the 5%. And then Mark Wahlberg came back and wanted to do the movie, and that really got the movie made. And John Zalziernis.
So how did Mark Wahlberg end up saying yes to this?
Antoine Fuqua, and again, this is. It's funny, when you're the author of the book, your main job is to write a good book, to sign the contract, cash the check, and then do as much marketing as you can around the book and the movie when the two come out together.
Yes.
Right?
So you're not really there in the office selling it or dealing with contracts.
Exactly. So they didn't consult me a lot, and I was getting this news secondhand. What I heard is that I know that Mark Wahlberg has done at least one collaboration with Antoine Fuqua, and that was a movie called Shooter back in the 2000s. And that was actually a movie that I really liked. And then I think that Mark Wahlberg has worked with one of the producers on some of the Transformer movies a couple of times. So I think that they had a strong working relationship, and that Mark was sort of a known commodity to them. And, you know, I get the feeling from the time that I met Mark, the one time that I met Mark, and what he does in the industry is when he says he's going to do something, he does something. Right. Seems like a man of really high integrity, as well as artistic talent.
Well, he's a huge name. I mean, there's a handful of people who will open a movie. They call it opening a movie, don't they? Like Tom Cruise and Tom Hanks. But Mark Wahlberg is one of those people who they will say his name's on the poster. That guarantees a certain number of people who are going to go and see the film and allows it to open.
Yeah, exactly. And that's Lorenzo de Bonaventura, the producer, really gave me an education on this when we were on set in Tring. And he basically talked about the manufacturing of movies and the process and the business behind it. And you've got to have one of those A-list stars in order to get the audience to go to the movies. And if you can get the audience, then you can get the financing to, make a $100, $150, $200 million movie. Yeah. Which they did.
Wow. It's a big budget movie. I expect that to be the case with Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah. Although he's done some really cool, indie stuff.
He does good comedy, actually, Mark Wahlberg. He's quite versatile. He's surprisingly versatile. He does comedy.
He's tremendously versatile. Yeah. And, you compare his comedy stuff to his role in The Departed or The Basketball Diaries, and or Boogie Nights, and that guy can really bring it. He's got a tremendous amount of range, doesn't he?
Yeah, he really has. So the movie shot over, I think they tend to shoot it like a month, 6 weeks now, don't they? Used to be like 3 months, but these days I think they shoot in 45 days max, is it?
It was I think it was a little longer than that. I think it was closer to 75 days.
Okay, well
they shot it in mostly at those Gillette Studios.
That's a beautiful building in West London. I know that building. I drive past it occasionally.
Yeah, you can sort of see it off of the highway that goes west. Unfortunately I didn't get to go on set there. I just went up to go on location in Tring. They shot it there. They shot some in Mexico City. They shot some in Thailand. Wow. And I don't know if this is an homage to the backstory or not, James, but they actually shot some of it in Nepal as well.
Wow. Oh, how lovely. And what was it like being on set and hearing your words? I mean, they would have started as your words, possibly changed a little bit along the way, but being spoken by actors in a big budget movie with a huge crew.
So I'll start off with a very declarative statement, and I'll give the backstory around this. James, it was terrifying, and you might not expect that answer, right? But and listen, I I'm an executive at a large software firm, or at least I was up until last Thursday when I decided to take a leave of absence to focus on the book launch and writing of the second and third books. So I'm very comfortable speaking in front of large audiences all the time, but there was something about going on set, on location, and the closer that we got to Tring, the more nervous I became because I just didn't know what to expect. I'd written this novel. It's your baby, just like Final Flight is yours. And then it had gone on this incredible journey through the reward, through Nepal, through the different studios, through Bellevue Productions. And then I realized that morning that I'm going to go there, and this is going to be sort of the finish line for big parts of this dream that I've had for the better part of a decade. And James, I got there and I didn't know what to expect. And I went to the little they have like a little check-in area, which is like a little construction trailer almost. And you check in and they do the security there, you get your badge. And I said, I didn't even know if they would know who I was. I talked to one of the producer's assistants and I said, hey, I'm going to be in London. I'd love to go on set, me and my wife. And so I show up at the little trailer and I said, hey, I'm Eric MiKrantz. I wrote the novel that the movie's based on. And they're all like, well, yeah, we know. Like, of course you are, right? And so that sort of, diffused a little bit for me. And then they said, yeah, here's your badge. Go back with the driver, go up to the mansion and ask for Mark Varadian, who's the one of the producers. And I get up there and I ask for Mark Varadian, huge, giant, athletic guy. It's like he could have been a rugby player. And he's just, oh, Eric, oh, so nice to meet you. And they were just the warmest as they could be. And, just took the arm around me, showed me the set, introduced me to the actors, introduced me to the director. And I'll never forget at the end, this is the thing that really sort of resonated with me. Lorenzo de Bonaventura, who has made a significant investment in this project himself as producer, puts his arm around me as we're walking back up from the craft tent. We're walking back up after lunch to see the shooting start on the second day. And he just said, take a look around. We're spending $150 million in this movie. And this is all because of an idea that came out of your head.
Amazing.
And James, that was amazing. But so it was terrifying at first because I just had no idea what to expect. And then when I got there and I started to recognize, themes in the movie and, actions of some of the characters, it was amazing. It was amazing.
Yeah. And we should say, due out next year.
So it is due out. So the movie is Infinite, starring Mark Wahlberg, and it's got a ton of British actors in it as well.
Yeah, I noticed Sophie Cook's in it, and there's quite a few. I looked down the list.
Sophie Cook's in, Chiwetel Ejiofor, Toby Jones, who I love, Liz Carr, and
it's got a really good cast.
Yeah, it's got an
also,
cast.
It's not just the director, but a lot of the producers have worked on really big films. This is a big pedigree Hollywood film. This is not a small independent thing. Yeah, this is Transformers. This is going on here. This is Da Vinci Code.
I know. This is the way that this is the way that I would have drawn it up if I got to script.
It is incredible. I mean, you must be pinching yourself at the moment.
I am.
But then I suppose you've got to wait for the critical reception. You got the book right. You've done your bit. The book has obviously just wowed people who've picked it up and made it. It's now in other creative hands, isn't it?
It is. It is. And, and they create their own interpretation, their own version of that. And some days that's hard. Other days it's the easiest thing in the world because, they created something that has gotten this kind of investment, this kind of attention. I mean, if you look at that cast and the people, the directors, the producers that are on this, they really latched on to Ian Shore's script for Infinite. And they said, yeah, let's make that. And, his art, his interpretation of my book speaks for itself. And he was able to do something that I was certainly not able to do, right? Otherwise, I would have gone straight to Hollywood from when I put it out. but it took an artistic genius like Ian Shore to build it into a legit tentpole Hollywood movie.
Well, what a fantastic story, and I can't wait to go and see it. Really exciting. I think I've quoted somebody before, I don't know who it is, might be apocryphal in the Hollywood business, who said, once you understand what goes into filmmaking, you'll be amazed any film ever gets made.
It is so true. There were literally hundreds of people. It was like an army moving around, doing shot to shot.
And then what I mean is, on the process there, anything could have gone wrong at any point and the film doesn't get made.
Absolutely, which is why, Rafi and John were right in that, hey, it's only going to be 1% of these that make it. It's only going to be 2 or 5% that make it from even this spot. And it's, there are so many movies that are projects that don't get made. I am so blessed. I'm so lucky to have found the people like Rafi, John Zalzirni, Ian Shore, Lorenzo de Bonaventura, Antoine Fuqua, Mark Wahlberg to make this happen.
I've got another question. So your book is still self-published, or have you now picked up a trad publisher?
So it's sort of a hybrid. So in the US, I have a traditional publisher. It's Blackstone Publishing for this edition. And Blackstone is doing a print, an ebook, and an audio version. And that is in pre-order right now. It'll come out on May 4th. So please pre-order now in the US and Canada. The rest of the world outside of the US and Canada gets this version, the black cover with the red symbol on it. And that's available in the UK, Australia, New Zealand. And James, I actually have gone back and have revisited the reward offer for the international versions. And the reward is open again for any reader who reads the book and can make an introduction to help me get the book published into translation.
Okay.
So I have readers that have made introductions. So back to the crowdsourcing, right? Because it works.
Yeah.
So I actually have a lead for Korean, and I actually have a lead with a publisher in Hungary to publish it in Hungarian. And for all of the people out there in self-publishing formula land, if you pick up the book, The Reincarnationist Papers, and read it, and you know somebody at a Spanish publisher, French publisher, Portuguese publisher, email me. Hit me up for the reward.
Something in it for you. And do you get to use, because the branding they'll come up with for the Hollywood movie will be everywhere for that period. Do you get to use that branding even on the stuff you're still self-publishing in Europe and elsewhere?
I do not. I potentially could have if I had specified that in the contract, but I did not.
Okay.
But
Blackstone have the right to that, because that looked like the movie branding, was it, or not?
No. This is very much our branding. So what we get to say is we get to say that it is, now the major motion picture Infinite, but the book title is The Reincarnationist Papers. And if you go to the Wikipedia site for Infinite movie, right, you'll see that it's based on the Reincarnationist Papers, but it has its own title from Ian Shore.
I mean, that is interesting, because I was thinking when my book gets picked up for a big movie, which obviously it will, and Tom Holland plays the lead, I would like that because if you keep the book self-published and you get a grab from the film of Tom Holland on the front cover, that's going to make a big difference, isn't it, to your marketing?
If I had to do anything over again with 2020 hindsight vision, it would have been to stipulate that in the contract.
Yeah,
I'm not asking for any refunds at this point.
No. And I didn't ask you about sort of the nitty gritty and stuff, but the final amount which gets paid on the principal photography day, is that a percentage of the budget, or is that a fixed amount as well? And I guess this probably varies from project to project, but
I think it varies project to project. Mine was a fixed amount. So think about buying like a reasonably priced local vacation for the option amount.
Yep.
Think about buying, a good entry level car for, when it sells to a studio, and think about buying sort of a modest starter home for the amount when they start principal shooting.
Okay, that's great.
So it was a fixed amount. And then from there, it was the contracts typically specify, that you make a percentage on the profits that the movie makes. But movies are notorious for having some unique accounting that keeps them in the red for a long period of time, so that people can continue to write off things. So I was cautioned early on, don't plan on seeing a ton of things on the back end. If you do, great. If not, what you're going to make is going to be what you make up front.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. Final areas. We've been chatting, unbelievable, about 45 minutes, I think now. The trad deal in America. Were you able then to look at that in a different way than you would have done in because you had your experience before where you worked out you weren't going to make much money from your travel books. Did you come at this from, I'm in a strong position, this is being made as a film, and negotiate a decent deal? I'm sure you did. But
yeah, I did. For me, the money wasn't it was an important driver, but it was a secondary driver. And I had my choice between Blackstone and an imprint at one of the big 5 publishers who they both wanted the book. And sort of counterintuitively, I went with the smaller publisher, sort of an independent publisher in Blackstone, and partially because they were really transparent with me and really committed to doing a lot of work around publicity and launch, and helping me launch the book as wide as possible. And we're working on that hand in hand now. And they've been amazing. They got me a great review in Publishers Weekly. They got me a great blurb on the cover from Diana Gabaldon, author of the Outlander series, which is amazing. They've got me as one of the indie handpicked favorites for Barnes and Noble, which is a big chain in the U.S. and their e-reading platform called Nook. And they've just done a tremendous amount. And I felt like I would be sort of a medium-sized fish in a medium-sized pond at Blackstone versus being a small fish in a big pond at one of the big 5. And for me, that was really important because I wanted to learn. I wanted to collaborate. I wanted to carry my own weight. I wanted to be going out and finding you and Mark to be on the Self-Publishing Formula podcast. And I think that's made all of the difference because, that's choosing them it's been like finding a family versus being in sort of a business transaction. And I've learned a ton in this process. One of the biggest pieces of advice that I've learned from trad publishing is that editing is a legit skill that all writers need to outsource to someone else. You think that you can edit your own work, because I'd edited my own work at least a dozen, if not 24 times. And I was mortified at the errors and mistakes and omissions that came back from my editor. And so, you need to be thinking about putting out really commercial quality art. And the editor is a key to that. So even if you're self-publishing, and I'm going to continue to be both trad published and self-published. I'm really a huge fan of self-publishing, and I'm going to embrace parts of that in my career going forward. Is I will hire an external editor going forward. And actually have an external editor that I use for the self-published versions of the book. Yeah,
no, I wholeheartedly agree. And my own experiences also have separate copy and proof editors. You need fresh pair of eyes. That last one, that proof, is very important. That you need somebody who's not familiar with the story because your brain starts to fill in gaps. If you know what's coming.
It does start to fill in gaps. And those gaps end up, like being blind spots.
Yeah.
that you need someone else to take a look at. That's brilliant advice, James.
And you're on to book 2 and 3 now, which I guess is going to be a really big part of your next few years.
Yeah, I'm on to book 2. This is it in markup right now. You can see all of my little notes on the side here. The Cognomina Chronicles. It's in draft number 6 right now. And it just went to my alpha reader, which is my wife. Superb. And my wife read it and said, hey, pretty good, but this part are not as strong as the rest. And you go back. And so I'm working on that in draft 6, and I'm going to share with my beta readers. And a fair number of my beta readers I got from my email list and the email newsletter and the interaction. You can tell the people that are sort of really bought in and really like the book and really, want to collaborate with you. And so I found, a handful of my beta readers on that, with the program that we've all, that we use via SPF.
Yeah.
So they'll be getting a copy of this probably in the next 30 days. And I hope that will be on Kindle, Audible, and bookshelves sometime in 2022, James.
Superb. Remind me when the film is slated for release.
So the film is slated for release. So the film is called Infinite. That's slated for release September 24th. Globally
this year.
So hopefully superb. We're all vaccinated. We've had a nice hot summer with lots of sunshine to knock down the numbers here, and we're all ready to go back to the movies, which I know I'm certainly excited to go back to the movies.
100%. Well, that's superb.
And the book is the Reincarnationist Papers.
Superb. Well, I tell you what, wish you all the luck with the launch and with book 2. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy. And maybe after the experience of the film, you'll come back on and we'll talk again, because I think that will be it'll be part of your story, which will be very interesting, as what happens when the film goes global. And then how you've reacted to that and what that experience was like. So maybe later in the autumn, going into winter, you come back on and have, if you don't mind, have a chat with us again. I'd love to. No, I would
love to. Listen, I'm not just a fan of the podcast. I'm a student, right? I use the materials, and I've used the materials to build part of the infrastructure that I'm using around my book now. And part of that infrastructure is to hopefully capture more of those fans that discover the book through the movie. So absolutely, Jeff, I would love to come back.
Yeah.
And by the way, people can get detail if they want around the reward offer and how I did it at ericmikrantz.com. There's a page there called the reward page that details how we're doing it for the translation editions, which is how we're getting into Hungary and how we're going to get into Korea.
Oh, yeah.
But they can also actually even see the copy that I used in the reward if people want to use that. If they do want to use it, I only ask one thing, that you call it the Maikranz reward. I want naming rights.
It'd be like the Oscars, the Maikranz. Yeah, the Maikranz.
I use the Maikranz system.
Superb. Okay, well, Eric, thank you so much indeed. It's been fascinating hearing the story, and like I say, very exciting for you. Can't wait for the next chapter to unfold, and we'll catch up with you then, and maybe see you at one of the conferences. Who know? Although you may be by that point on your Learjet, going out to see Mr. Wahlberg's island for the weekend. Who knows?
Who knows? Hey, it's been a real pleasure. Love your work, James. Love Mark's work. It's been a real pleasure and a real treat to be on this podcast and talk to everybody about self-publishing and my success.
It's been our pleasure. Thank you, Eric.
All right, bye.
This is the Self-Publishing Show. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
There we go. Eric Mikrantz, a lovely guy, full of energy. Big on promotion, absolutely. Why not? And promoting himself in an innovative way, Mark, of trying to find somebody to help him get a film deal. Yeah,
that's clever. I can. Why not? It's an interesting way to get interest generated. So well done to him.
I don't think I'll go to Kathmandu to drop my book off, but I have thought about putting my book in those telephone boxes you see around that are now little libraries in villages. That seems like a reasonable thing to do. You should do that, Milton. I mean,
no, it does. That does not scale. That's honestly, when I started out, when I was commuting on the train, I thought, how can I get people to find out about my book? And I thought about, I think I actually did it. I printed out some business cards and left them on the tables in the train, It just doesn't work. It doesn't scale. You're going to get in trouble for littering. Digital will be the way to do it. I think he got lucky. It's a good idea, but that's not going to happen very often.
No. Okay, good. Well, thank you very much indeed to Eric, and best of luck. Infinity is the film. Not sure of the release date. Believe it's next year. I think it was 2022. But look for Infinity with Mark Wahlberg, and I'll certainly be going to see how that works out for him. Fantastic moment for him. And thank you very much indeed, Mark. Both of us are busy at the moment, so we've squeezed in this interview. I think we need to do a batching day soon where we get like 4 wraps done for the rest of the summer, and then we can focus on all the other things we've got going on. In fact, you may even be going abroad if that happens at some point. Is that still on or not?
Yeah, who knows? We're supposed to be going to Spain at the end of the month, and that's looking a little bit dicey at the moment.
But looking a little bit brighter is the prospect of getting to Nink and Vegas.
I'm not confident. Vegas, I think, is possible. I think September is looking really, really dicey at the moment.
Well, the only thing I'm pinning this on is that the UK have opened up the UK government opened up the UK to US travellers. You don't have to quarantine from today, actually. And they said when they announced that they are in discussions with America about a reciprocal arrangement, which was the only thing I'm pinning that on. But I mean, it could be. Who knows how this works? It could be we might get to Nink and then not Vegas, because if we have a winter spike going up, people get nervous again and things close down. But who the heck knows? We'll try and find out. I'm keen to play some golf on some of those lovely manicured golf courses that we see on YouTube in America. And also meet people in the publishing world and do some work.
Oh, yeah. That as well, yeah.
Good. Okay, Mark, thank you very much indeed. All that remains for me to say is a goodbye from him.
And a goodbye from me. Goodbye.
Get show notes, the podcast archive, and free resources to boost your writing career at selfpublishingshow.com. Join our thriving Facebook group at selfpublishingshow.com/Facebook. Support the show at patreon.com/self-publishing show. And join us next week for more help and inspiration so that you can make your mark as a successful indie author. Publishing is changing, so get your words into the world and join the revolution with the Self-Publishing Show.